why this title is the way it is because platforms have become the new way of doing business. In the early days, when we didn't have internet, we didn't have the possibilities that we have today. People would basically manufacture products or think up services and basically just sell them either in stores or starting 20 years ago, online, e-commerce, web stores. But today, with a new technology arising, we have more possibilities than we did a few years ago. And these possibilities were used by people such as the people who found the relatively new company Airbnb. I think everybody has heard of Airbnb. It's a company that rents out private space for people who want to travel to a certain place. In the meantime, Airbnb has grown to be a platform hosting services for private rental space around the world. So you can basically just enter any city you would like to go to around the world, and you will find offers by private renters who like to rent out their apartments, and then basically you can just select from the offers that you have for each city. The idea started out in 2007 when two guys basically in the Bay Area rented out private space with airbeds. This is why it's called Airbnb. During a conference in San Francisco, so they had people knocking on their door because there were no hotels available at that time. People would basically pay them relatively high amount of money for just a small space and with an airbed. And so they went ahead and put up a website where they rented out their own space, and then one thing came to the next, and there were more people who wanted to participate. And then a few years later, in 2015, they had basically 25 million travelers coming to their sites from 190 countries without having any assets themselves. So they were basically a large hotel broker who rented out space to people from all over the world. And the solution, why were they able to become the largest hotel in the world without owning a single bed or a single room themselves? Well, because they were acting as a platform, which means they didn't manufacture or produce anything themselves. They would just provide the marketplace, the virtual marketplace, where they would act as intermediaries, basically as a broker between hosts, which means people who rent out space, and travelers who are the clients who would like to rent a room or an apartment, and they provide the platform where these two parties meet. Right, and this platform business is the reason why Airbnb is able to carry out its business with just a few hundred employees who handle 40 million guests per night or per year. And the thing is, the focus is basically on building a web interface and mobile apps that make it easy and frictionless for hosts who offer lodging and for travelers to find a place to stay, right? And another secret of Airbnb's success, why people, rent via this platform, is because they were able to establish trust between the two parties, and they did this by, establishing possibilities for mutual ratings and reviews. So people, hosts as well as renters were able to or are able to rate each other and give reviews. So if you have an account on Airbnb, you can get ratings, or you can get rated basically on your rental or hosting behavior. And let's say if you rent out a place that you ask a lot of money for, and the place is not really that great, then of course the people visiting you will rate you and will give you then corresponding ratings, and over the long run, if you do it a couple of times, then people will notice that you're a fluke, and then they won't rent with you anymore, probably. So this is the way this business model works, and this is why Airbnb puts a lot of emphasis on establishing trust and also acting kind of as a bank. The money is paid out to the renter as soon as the people arrive and check in, not before. So if something goes wrong, or if someone puts out an apartment that doesn't exist, then of course the money is not transferred to the person renting it out. And this is also a measure to establish trust with the with the guests who put their money at stake when renting a place where they've never been before, especially in a foreign country. So the question is, how does this platform work? And this platform works basically, we'll see it in this picture. You have a three-way platform, basically, where you have a host, which is basically the person renting an apartment out to somebody, or a room. And you have a visitor who wants to rent an apartment at a certain place, right? And you can see it. You can see the arrows on top where you see the room being rented to the visitor and the person renting the apartment. And of course, the intermediary, in this case, Airbnb, who acts as a platform or who puts up the platform. And what they do is basically they do three things. They give access to the market to the hosts, and of course to the visitors. So they provide a platform where both can meet, basically. What they also do is they ask hosts to put up a profile and put up their room and what they have to offer. And of course, they ask visitors also to put up their own profile so that hosts can also review who they're renting to. So it's also important to establish trust with the renters, because of course you don't want anybody in your room who might break something or be careless with your things. So you also want to have a trustworthy visitor visiting your apartment or your room. And the third thing that they do is, of course, they charge a fee. This is what they live on. And what they do is they ask a 3% service fee from the hosts, or basically a 6 to 12% fee from the visitors for making this transaction possible. So basically, in the age of competition today, companies ask the question, which assets they really need to own themselves, and which ones that can be managed through new kinds of relationships. So it's not necessary anymore for organizations to own their own assets so much. It's more necessary to put up a certain business model that brings people together. So as we saw with Airbnb, it's not really necessary to own large hotels or even one single room. It's more important to bring people together that need rooms and others that have rooms, basically. Right? Also, regarding competition, what's interesting is that the boundaries that used to be, very stable regarding providers and consumers are blurring, which means that today it's the distinction between partners and competitors is not as clear anymore as it used to be. So we have a shifting mix of competition and cooperation, which is called co-opetition. As an example, traditionally HBO, which is a provider for paid TV, it's a home box office, they would partner with cable companies, for distribution and compete with, networks like as Showtime, right? Today it's different. Today HBO faces competition from, companies like Netflix, who are in fact asymmetric challengers, because Netflix is a company that uses the internet as a distribution channel, and HBO is one that uses, cable TV. So basically, they have nothing in common on first. In the end, they do because they target customer, but they have a different pricing model and they have different means of distribution. So as you can see, competition is not as simple as it used to be, as as streamlined as it used to be. It is more difficult and more complex, because it's happening less within industries and less between similar companies as it used to be. But it's happening more across industries and between partners who rely on each other for success, basically. Okay. So to put it in a nutshell, what we just talked about is when we look at the traditional way of doing business to today, the world of platforms, we see that competition is becoming more fluid, that you have less distinctions between partners and rivals. So what might be partners today might be rivals tomorrow. Okay. And competition is not a zero-sum game anymore, where people try to, steal market share from each other, but it's more, let's say, a cooperation where competitors help each other in certain areas, but in others maybe they don't. Maybe they really compete in other areas, but at least in some areas they see that they had better work together in certain areas, because they see that they can create a win-win situation for themselves. Okay. Then, of course, the assets, key assets used to be held inside the firm. Today, it's not so relevant anymore that the assets reside inside the firm. It's more outside. I mean, we see it in the cloud business. Companies don't really need to own their own servers anymore. They can rent them from other providers and can use storage space and server services from outside. So every business can outsource their IT nowadays, and doesn't really have to have their own IT department anymore. Okay, so this is one example of outsourcing assets to someone else. Then products used to have unique features and benefits, of course, but now you have platforms being established with partners to exchange value. Right? It's also different because it's not so much the product anymore that's relevant. It's more the platform. It's more the connection that's necessary or relevant that you establish between different partners who will look for creating value or who seek value. And of course, the role of the companies is also changing. We had few dominant competitors per category, so you'd have quite many firms let's say residing next to each other. In the old days in the marketplace, today it's the one who provides the service best takes it all, such as Facebook. There's no platform such as Facebook anymore. Or if you look at Google is, we have other search engines, of course, but Google is the one that is most relevant in the marketplace and has basically the highest market share by far. So today in the platform world, due to network effects, you have a tendency to have the winner takes it all. Then the next slide shows you the different platform businesses. If you want to define a platform business, what a platform is, we can look at the definition that is given by Rogers. Platforms are defined by Rogers as platforms bring together two or more parties to create and exchange value through the business rather than trying to create all the value themselves. So basically, you bring together people who exchange the things that they need, and that's all you do. It's not like you are in your own basically basement, putting together products and manufacturing them en masse, and then trying to advertise them and market them. It's more you bring people together and have them deliver the value to each other themselves. That's basically the secret of platforms. And you can see different platform types below. You have the marketplaces like eBay, Etsy, or Alibaba, where they bring together buyers and sellers of goods of all kinds in direct sales or auctions. You have matchmaking services like Uber or Didi Kuari, who provide taxi services, and they do it not by purchasing vehicles and hiring drivers, but by providing a platform to connect drivers in their own cars with people nearby who need a car service. So as you can see, Uber is a company who does not, largest taxi company in the world without owning a single taxi. So as you can see, this is only possible because they bring people together who have cars and those who need a ride, basically. Then you have media companies, just like YouTube or Forbes, who operate by bringing together independent content creators, consumers and advertisers, and each of whom is seeking out the other. So again, regarding media, YouTube doesn't own a single TV or a single camera itself, probably. They just put up the website, the platform, and people can either put up videos or consume them. And that's basically the model that they're operating at. Then you have the mobile operating systems like Apple's iOS, Google Android, who compete by attracting the best software developers to create apps. And by doing so, they draw consumers to buy their smartphones. So as you can see, even iOSs and Android are platforms in a way, because they draw people there who exchange certain services. Here you have different platform businesses. You can see here, I won't go into every one of them, different industries you have here. And these are just examples of platforms that you have that you can take a look at and see what they offer and how this works. And it's very interesting to see how they operate, because with this mode of operation, you can see different examples how these things work, and of course this can be used for new platforms and new ideas, because you can basically put up a platform for any kind of business if you're smart and you have a good idea. So what are platform businesses? Well, a platform is a business that creates value by facilitating direct interactions between two or more distinct types of customers. And this definition is again a definition by Rogers. And you have three key ingredients in this definition. The first one is distinct types of customers, which means different parties that each play different roles and contribute and receive different kinds of value. Okay. Then you have different direct interaction, which means that there must be a certain degree of independence. For example, creating one's own profile, set or negotiate one's own prices, and presenting products. And of course, facilitating the interaction must take place through the platform and be facilitated by it. So, of course, you have to have an interaction that must take place between two or more parties, and this is why the platform must have an interaction going on. Here you have another table. On this table, you can see what kind of customers are interacting directly, and you can see Airbnb, the example we had before. You have hosts and renters interacting. You have Uber, freelance drivers and riders. You have DonorsChoose, which are school teachers seeking grants and donors. You have PayPal, who with account holders and merchants and banks. You have YouTube with video viewers and creators. You have Google Search with search engine users, website creators, and search advertisers. You have Forbes, independent writers, readers, and advertisers. You have the iPhone or Android operating system with users, hardware manufacturers, app developers, and advertisers. And you have Salesforce with software users, app developers creating additional services. So the question is, how does digital business impact the platforms? Well, the new digital technologies we have, which is the World Wide Web, the on-demand cloud computing services, the application programming interfaces, they increase the interoperability of data, functionality, and drive the following four elements of platforms. Well, the first one is frictionless acquisition. If you want to place an ad, or if you want in the old days wanted to place an ad on TV, it was a very intense, tedious, and also very expensive process, because you would have to go to the television program advertisers. You had to negotiate with the network directly. It was long negotiations. You have to pay a high price for placing an ad on TV. But in contrast, if you want to place an ad on Google, you just go to the Google AdWords website and enter your credit card information and just launch an ad, which is very expensive. Very cheap. And you can just test it, and if you see it doesn't work, then you try something else. So you just trial and error. You can just kind of go along with things and test things out really quickly and without any hassle. So basically, anyone can place an ad nowadays on Google. But this wasn't the case, or this is not the case with TV, right? The second thing is the growth is scalable, which means that you can grow your form, let's say, to any size. Basically, there's no end. If you compare, for example, a traditional nightclub or like a club where people go and have dance and have a good time, then of course, due to the size of the nightclub, the space is limited, and you can only serve so many clients per night, or restaurants or whatever. But if you open up a dating service such as meetup.com, you can basically scale this as as large as you like. The only limit is basically the web space you buy and the people you hire for managing your services. But in principle, there's no real end to your business. Then the third element is on-demand access and speech. So, it's obvious the digital platforms can be accessible to all of customers anywhere and at any time. In the traditional world, it was not the case. You did not have, people could not meet in nightclubs 24/7. They could not go there 24/7, but now you can go on your dating website, check out who looked at your profile, and put up new information about yourself at any time, basically. So there's no real beginning and real end. You can do it. You can get online anytime you want to, and anywhere, basically. So the access is entirely different than before. Then the fourth element is the trust element. Trust is important because nowadays with the internet, of course, things are more anonymous at first, but having authentication procedures over Facebook or Google or Twitter accounts make it easier. Also for small startups to use this verification system for new customers, because people trust Facebook or Google, and if they use these verification systems via Facebook or Google, they can attract customers to use their services quickly and easily, without having the hassle of convincing people that they're trustworthy and that they can enter their credentials on their websites. So
excuse me.
this trust is essential for growth, and we saw this on Airbnb. Airbnb does this successfully. People trust Airbnb, and you can see this by the growth numbers that they display and by what they offer and how many customers they attract. Then if we look at the benefits that platforms give you, we can see the two major benefits are, first of all, platform is light in assets, which means that companies do not need to own a lot of assets to put up a platform. In fact, Uber doesn't have any vehicles at all. Facebook doesn't provide any content. Alibaba has no inventory. Airbnb has no real estate or any hotels or any rooms. Why? Because these are platform businesses who give their customers the job of creating their own value. And this is why they don't really need to have any of their own assets, basically. Okay. So, and the other, let's say, typical factor is that these companies also tend to have, few employees compared to the revenue they generate, because customers do their own work of putting up information and content that used to be done by the employees of the company themselves. But nowadays, this is not necessary anymore, because the platform only connects people, and the people put up their own content themselves, which is nice, because this work doesn't have to be done by the platform business itself anymore. And the other benefit you have is you have fast and quick scalability, which means that platform businesses can grow very quickly. They have low operating costs because they have few assets and few employees. And combined with a scalable cloud computing architecture, this is made possible so that quick growth is possible and is basically has become normal in this kind of business. Here we have an overview of selected companies and market value. We see Google, Facebook, Amazon, Alibaba, and others. And you can see what kind of platform.
Excuse me.
These are and what market value they have. And as you can see, Google, again, or Facebook, they have no assets. They have relatively few employees, and they have a market value of $425 billion in 2015, which is an incredible high amount of money, right? So as you can see, a high market value is not tied to an asset-rich company anymore, or a company who has a lot of employees, but it is more the service and the value they create for their customers. So the next step basically is to be able to create a platform business oneself, and the first step is creating a business model map. This is an example from Facebook. It's a business model from Facebook, and you see here you have the users who interact socially, who put up content, who pay for apps, who pay for sharing apps, for ads, and then you have the publishers who put up content, and the audience who looks at what publishers publish. You have the advertisers who draw that draw audience and traffic to their own sites and to their ads. And then you have the app developers who develop apps for Facebook, and of course Facebook who pays for the apps, but then of course gets the share by the users when the users use these apps and use these services. So and as you can see here, the circle is the platform. If you want to draw your own business model map for your own business, you go along with these different symbols here, and you have the circle that represents the platform itself. It is Facebook in this case. Then you have the diamonds, who are the payers, which means the customers that provide revenue to the platform. And the payers in this case are the users, the advertisers, and the app developers who provide the value. And the rectangle are the sweeteners. Those are customers that provide no revenue, but who help to attract other valuable customers. And in this case, it is the publishers for Facebook. Then you have the spikes, and the spikes is the number of other customer types that are attracted, because publishers have only one spike because they attract only users, but users have 4 spikes because they attract publishers, advertisers, app developers, and more users like themselves. So the thing is that in this case, the users who attract a lot of other users, they are basically the linchpin, which means this is the key factor in the whole business, because this is the customer type with the most spikes. This is why the users have double borders. Then you have the arrows in each direction. that show the value provided or received by each customer type. Then you have the value in boldface, which is monetary value, which means value in money. Then you have value in parentheses that is provided by the platform itself or to the platform itself. You can see this here, advertisers providing dollars for the audience, or the apps providing user stickiness for Facebook. Then you have the value that are not in parentheses that is passed through the platform and are provided to other customers. So you can use these markers to draw up your own platform or take any other platform and draw up a business model map for this platform to understand how it works, basically. So to analyze a platform, you can ask the following questions. You can ask, who are the platform's key customers? Then what is the role or value contribution for each customer type? What draws each party to the platform? How does the platform monetize? What value do customers provide? And how could more value be extracted or leveraged from the platform? And this is how you analyze, existing platforms. If you want to launch your own platform, you can ask the following questions. You can ask the question regarding, who do you need to bring on board to make your platform work? How will you monetize? Who are your most important customers? Does each party receive enough value to attract its participation? And does each party contribute enough value to justify its inclusion? Okay. So these are questions to ask if you want to launch your own business model. But the steps are, as I said, first of all, drawing up your own business model, using the model that I presented to you that Facebook uses. And then the next step would be to ask these questions when launching your own platform, so you can really get into the details and draw up a really good a viable map of how you will get your own platform going. So before we start, just a few definitions maybe, so we know what we're talking about. Strategic management is basically a tool to provide an overall direction to the enterprise, and it involves specifying the organization's objectives, right? So you have to have goals in your organizations, and with these goals, you need to develop plans to achieve these objectives, these goals. And then of course, you need to allocate resources, which means employees, people, to implement these plans in your organization. Digitalization is basically, in the sense of making a company digital, the use of digital technologies to change a business model and to provide new revenue and value-generating opportunities. Right? So this means you have to think first about the business model. It's not just about making everything PDF and Word documents instead of writing it on a piece of paper. That's one part of digitalization, but it is implementing a business model first, and to think about how can you engage your customers on a digital platform? How can you reach your customers digitally, and how can you deliver the value of your organization in a digital way to your clients, basically, right? So, and for this, you need a business model that reflects these digital pathways that are available nowadays. Okay. So, and digital strategy, if you put the two together, is basically the answer to the question: how can a business win, which means be profitable, right? Using information and technology to raise human performance. Okay. So, the question is, how can you use basically technology to create value for your customers and get your products in the market. So in this seminar, we're going to look at the 3 domains of digital transformation, which is customer networks. This is the most important thing. You have to think about your customers and how you can connect them with one another before you think about anything else, of course, because you need a product or service that is based around the needs of your customers. That is the most important thing. Second thing is, how can you deliver this value you create for your customers to your customers? And we will talk about platforms, which is a new field of digitalization, which is very new, very modern these days. Think about Airbnb, which is one example of platforms, and this is just it's a way of connecting customers and producers with one another, and to generate more value for them, right? And the third aspect we're going to cover is basically the link between the two on an international basis. So you are going to, or you should be able to reach your customers internationally. So anyone in the world you would like, and you should also be able to communicate with them on a platform basis, and also take into consideration where they come from. This is very important, because otherwise you will lose these customers or these prospects, right? So you have to think about culture and how they react to different stimuli, to different offers, and before you do anything else, of course. Good. So now we're going to look at customer networks. First, before we look at the networks themselves, we need to look at the assumptions that are out there nowadays. So you need to think about how people, how customers are behave basically, or how they respond to certain stimuli, how they interact with firms. And the most important difference is basically that customers nowadays act as dynamic networks, as opposed to a mass market, waiting to buy from you. No, what happens today is customers are connected with one another through Facebook, Twitter, through any other social media, and this is the reason why people can communicate with one another. They can connect with one another. They can share opinions about products, about services. Give each other hints about what's new or what's not so new anymore. So this means when you develop your strategy, you have to think about how customers interact, how they behave, right? What they do, what they don't do anymore. And people don't just sit at home and wait for your product and buy it. No, they connect, they rate you, they review your product. And you have to think about, this in advance, and how you can maybe influence this process, right? So the second thing is basically, in the old days, traditionally, communication was basically one-sided, right? So people just basically, companies were just, broadcasting their message out there, via TV commercials, via radio commercials, or via whatever, newspaper. And people, saw the ad or the offer, and then they went and bought the product, or they didn't, basically. Today, it's different. Today, people are interacting with the companies two-way, which means people are responding. When a company is on Twitter or on Facebook, people respond to the company and ask them questions and expect an answer or expect help from them. So this means that companies need to be aware of these changes, or that there's a need for them to interact with the customers, even if they have not bought yet, right? So there's a lot more to do than just putting your product out there. It's more engaging customers and getting them to talk to you and to trust you, basically. Right? So it's a lot of trust in this process. So the roles are shifting from the firm being the key influencer to the customers being the key influencers of one another, shaping their opinions and their ideas, right? And so it's basically shifting from being a marketing based on persuading on praising the product and talking people into buying it, to being more inspiring. People need to be. So it is basically shifting to becoming more inspiring. So marketing needs to be more inspiring. It needs to foster loyalty and brand advocacy, which is just basically that people become fans of your brand. And as I said before, two-way communication or multi-way communication. That people recommend you, talk to you, talk about you in a good way on social media, etc. So this is very important. So the most important thing is to have a good reputation and to engage with people, to establish trust, right? And to be able to get a good, to get the image of over-delivering, basically. Over-delivering, trust, being a good partner. If something goes wrong, to be able to refund the money quickly without hassle. So people need to trust you more. They want to trust. They have more needs than ever nowadays. There's a lot of competition out there, so you need to make sure that you deliver great product, great service at an affordable price. You're trustworthy. You look at the needs of the audience, and you enter into communication with them. That's the most important thing. And the last point here is basically it's economies of scale by the firm. So people in the mass markets were trying to basically to produce or manufacture a lot of the product to be able to manufacture it at a lower cost per piece, right? Cost per unit. Nowadays, it's more economies of the customer value. So you need to create customer value to be able to sell to the customers. And it's not so much about mass, selling mass. It's about customizing the experience to the consumer, right? So it's not enough to just have a good product and be cheap. It's more about customizing the experience around the product. Okay. Good. So if we look at the mass market model here, as I said before, we are looking at the mass production. So companies used to produce for the mass markets and used to communicate to masses. Basically, nowadays it's shifting. Customers are interconnecting with one another, talking not so much to the company, but and more to themselves, and then ask the company for help, right? And if the company cannot help, they won't buy, basically. So if you look at the customer network model, as I said, customers try to enter into connection with one another through Twitter, Craigslist, YouTube, blogs, comments, etc. And they have forums. They talk. They exchange information, opinions, recommendations. And the thing is, question: how can you, as a company, use this circumstance, this fact, because it is the way it is right now? You cannot change it as a company. You have to live with this. And the question is, how can you use this to as an advantage? Basically, right? And this is where the customer network model comes into play. The customer network model basically looks at the potentials, that the customers have for their business, right? So they use this by implementing platforms that allow them to interact, publish, broadcast, and innovate, and shape the brand's reputation. So this means what companies do not do anymore. They do not set up their company, manufacture something, maybe test once or twice, and then put it all on the market. No, what they do is nowadays they put up a platform, let people come to the platform, let them interact, and talk to them, and you use them basically as a catalyst or as input to check what is basically wanted in the market. What they need, what kind of problems they have. So they try to understand the customers. They try to get them to talk to them, to interact, to get more information, right? And then by this information that they get from the customers, they are shaped. They shape their own brand. They shape their own reputation, their own philosophy, their own strategy, basically. So this means that the relationship between companies and between customers are becoming more complex, right? Because it's not just a one-way communication process or a one-way selling process. It is a process in which every single customer has a certain voice, can raise this voice, and can enter into communication and brand shaping activities by posting opinions, ratings about the company. And this makes it more complex, but on the other hand, gives the company more information about the customers, about what they need, what they want. And taken together, my opinion is that this will, of course, revolutionize the way companies do business on the one hand. On the other hand, it also it gives companies more opportunities because they can use this information to better serve the needs of the customers. Okay. So from a customer network perspective, what does a company need to do? A company needs to listen in, observe, of course, what the customers do in this network, and understand their perceptions, responses, and unmet needs. Like I said, first thing is to understand the customers, and the next step is, of course, to react to these unmet needs and to try to fulfill these needs, right? And of course, what needs to be done is it needs to identify and nurture those customers who may become brand champions, right? Or marketing partners, co-creators. So it needs to look at the people who are really interested in their products, in their services, and they need to use these people basically as marketers, right? As people who advocate the products and services. Okay. And one of the main points in this model is that the customer can be any key constituency that the organization serves and relies on. Okay. So basically, it can be anyone. Like it can be let's say a business person, can be the housewife sitting at home, it can be the child sitting on the computer. So anybody who has any connection with the company, who is interested in what they have to offer, and of course who have a voice, right? Think about the YouTubers online these days. Basically teenagers who are able to reach a lot of people because they have good skills regarding YouTubing, and who have a lot of followers and a large audience. And as a company, of course, it is of great advantage if you use these people, as your voice, basically. Good. So, as a matter of fact, all these types of customers or consumers, right? They all of them exhibit a dynamic network behavior relating to the firm and each other. So it's just, as I said before, it is this network model where everybody is connected to everybody. People have hundreds, thousands of friends, influence these friends, and they get influenced back. And this is what you need to take into account when you become digital. Good. So the first tool, let's say, to harness, which means to grab this customer network, is basically the so-called marketing funnel, right? And the marketing funnel is basically nothing else. It is basically just it's a metaphor for how people are drawn into your company and are drawn into buying something and becoming customers, loyal or long-term loyal customers. The way it works, or it worked, let's say, in the old days, is basically by broadcasting. Okay, broadcasting means basically you were trying to get people or prospects, potential customers aware of your products by putting out television advertising, TV commercials, radio advertising, out of door experiences to create awareness of your product, that you exist, basically. Okay, and then the next step is to was to fund consideration, which means you want to get these people who were aware of your products to consider, to take into consideration buying from you, by, for example, direct mail or putting out brochures, and getting people to think about you, think about maybe I want to buy from you. Okay, and the next step, the preference. The preference stage was basically when people were really becoming engaged and thinking about really, oh, this might be a great product, and I think I might prefer this product over any other product. And this was basically done, for example, by direct mail coupons, and being able to compare your products to other products. For example, the way Pepsi and Coke did it. So they did some testing with people and tried to get them to test Coke and Pepsi, and try to get people to think that Coke tastes better and that they should buy Coke, for example, Coca-Cola. So the next step after preference is the action stage. The action stage is basically just it's a purchase stage. And to foster the action stage, companies would use tools such as promotions, to like discounts, whatever, to get people to buy more from them, and or also promotion tours where they would put up stands and tell people to go there and just check it out, and becoming more engaged and trying to get them to buy even more. Okay? And the next step, the loyalty stage, used to be done by offering reward programs. For example, supermarkets do this a lot, where they offer points. The more you buy at the supermarket, the more points you get, and then after a certain amount of points collecting, you get something for free. Right. This is the old way of getting people to become loyal to you. Nowadays, this whole funnel has changed. If you look at the customer network, the way it is today, you create awareness not so much by TV or radio. Of course, this has some relevance these days, but you create awareness more by by being having good search engine results, which means by being ranked high on Google when people look for certain keywords that relate to you. That they find you, they find your page, and then they go to your page and check out your stuff, what you're offering. And this is the way awareness is generated today, or basically other ways are buzz, social buzz, creating social buzz, get people talk to you, or to talk about you, basically. Blogs, for example, where people are basically creating blogs and talking about their companies, and people read it and become aware of your product and your services. The consideration phase these days works by customer reviews, basically. So not so much people are writing about you. For example, on TripAdvisor, if you look for a restaurant, for example, a steakhouse in Parrilla in Buenos Aires, for example, Argentina, where I am right now, you use TripAdvisor to look for this Parrilla, which means the steakhouse. And if it looks appealing to you from the pictures and the menu, you also check out the reviews. And if people write bad things about you in the reviews, of course, people might consider not to go there. So it's important to get good reviews, good rating, which means you have to deliver better service, better food, whatever. Anything that supports people giving you ratings. This is key in a customer network world. But of course, at the preference stage, people use social networks, YouTube. They tape things, and in the restaurant, maybe they put up some pictures of the food on Facebook. Wow, I had great food at this steakhouse. And then people see this, and they are attracted to the steakhouse, and then they go there themselves. This is how preference is generated, basically. And then actions. Of course, the action nowadays is basically either the purchase from the website, if it's e-commerce, or the purchase in the physical store, the restaurant, or both. If you have both, if you have an e-commerce site and you have a physical store, of course you can sell via both channels. Right? Loyalty is generated in the customer network world by email marketing, social media marketing, more than any reward points. You have to become friends with your Facebook followers, your customers on Twitter, and you need to customize your upselling, which means you need to find ways to offer more expensive or higher quality products, so you make more revenue. And you do this by friending, which means befriending people, which means becoming their trusted friend, basically, and offering them more quality and getting them to making them better offers at a higher price, if it's possible. Of course, if it's not, you can also decide to downsell, which means to sell cheaper stuff to them if you feel that this audience you're talking to is not doesn't have the money to buy the higher priced products. So you find ways to sell them something cheaper. Of course, this is called upselling and downselling. Okay. And the last stage is a stage that was implemented by Rogers, or basically thought up by Rogers. It's the advocacy stage, and this stage is something that is becoming more important in the customer network world, where everybody is connected. Why? Because these brand promotions and these reviews, these posts, these likes on Facebook, what they do is they create more awareness with new customers. And this way, if you are rated in a high way, if you have a good reputation, if you get a lot of likes for the things you offer, of course, people see it, and other people also become aware of your products and your services, and then they start buying from you, maybe, or hopefully, right? So this advocacy stage basically feeds into this awareness stage on top, and this is how you expand your business in a customer network. Good. This is basically just an overview of what we just talked about for you. You can review this later on if you like. It's just in writing what I just talked to you about regarding the funnel. So the next step we need to take is basically to look at the customer network behavior a little bit more closely. Why? Because in the funnel principle, it's basically a macro tool, a very very broad tool to get an overview of the path to purchase, which means of the way from becoming having a customer who has no experience with you to getting someone at the end of the funnel who's really a fan of yours and who promotes your product to other people, to friends, family. But to create a real strategy, we need to look at how people behave in the market, right? Not just how advocacy or loyalty is created. So the questions that should be answered, when we're talking about behavior, is basically how do you engage customers in their network world? So how do you get to know them, and how can you get them to engage with you? What motivates them, right? And what are they looking for? And there are basically five different behaviors that customers display that I'd like to talk to you about, and it's basically 5 principles, and you can use these principles to develop a corresponding strategy, and I will show you in a minute how this is done. Okay. So the first type of behavior or key component of customer behavior is basically access. Access means, I did it with the music industry here in this example. Access basically means that people or customers seek to access digital data, content, and interactions as quickly, easily, and flexibly as possible. Okay? So this means is if you can ensure that your content, your service is provided to them immediately, as the end, the mail immediately, then you are fine, then you're safe. Okay, I will show you how things developed, over the last couple of, decades or centuries. In the beginning, people had to go to concerts, to listen to music, right? The next step was that the gramophone was created, or the early stages of basically a record player, and where people were able to listen to music at home, which was a great invention at that time. The next step was to create something smaller, which was the Revox tape, where you could store basically data. I think this was still an analogous magnetic type of storage. I'm not the storage expert here, but I think it was an analogous magnetic type of storage procedure taking place. And this also ensured that you could record your own stuff, which was not possible when you bought records. You buy the record, just listen to it, that's it. But with the tapes, you can also tape yourself. Of course, this is something new. You could make or create your own music. You could tape it, which was, of course, something really, really new. Okay, for end customers to do. Next stage was the cassette tape, which was basically a smaller version of the Revox tape. And then we, in the early 1980s, we entered into the digital world with the first CD, compact disc, where the data was stored in a digital way. Okay. Then the next stage was the MP3, beginning of 2000 or decade 2000, where you didn't have to buy CDs anymore, where you can just put your music on a stick, on an MP3 stick, and listen to it anywhere you wanted to without carrying around a CD player with you, which was, of course, a great invention at that time. Then the next step was, or the next stage in development was the iTunes platform. The iTunes platform allowed people to download music legally, single music pieces for, I think, 99 cents each song, which means you didn't have to buy a whole CD anymore. You didn't have to carry around an MP3 stick. You didn't have to pre-charge your MP3 stick with songs. No, you could go to the iTunes store and download any piece of music you would like. Okay, to your smartphone, to your iPod, whatever. Okay. The next stage in the development was Spotify. As an example, I think there are other examples like Deezer. But Spotify was the first one who did it. And Spotify is basically a new way, or a better iTunes, but basically why? Because you didn't have to download the music to your device, but you could listen to it from the cloud. So you had an account with Spotify on the cloud. You just log in. You select a song, and then you just listen to the song on the Spotify platform, which means there's no more need to download the song to your device. Okay, so this was the application of the cloud service to the music industry. And the newest invention is, of course, Amazon Alexa, which is basically just where you don't have to set up an account anymore. You just tell Alexa, I want to listen to song X or song Y. And then Alexa plays it for you. You don't care about where it comes from anymore. You don't care about Spotify or Deezer or any other account setting up or any playlists. You just tell Alexa, play it, period. Okay? So as I say, access means, if you look at the picture in the top left corner, where you had to, buy a ticket, go to a concert, it's a long way to access the music. And Alexa on the right hand side, on the bottom of the page, is basically the at the moment the quickest way to access music right now. So if you can invent ways for people to access your stuff quickly, easily, and affordably, then of course you have a major advantage in your strategy, right? To get your service and your product out to the customers. The next principle is that, the next behavior that people display is basically engagement. Okay, engagement means that customers seek to engage with digital content that is sensory, interactive, and relevant to their needs. Okay, so if we look at the top left corner, we see these stone plates where people used to use them in the olden ages for inscriptions, for putting writing on them. Of course, a very tiresome way of writing things down. This changed when people invented paper and writing with pens, in ink. And of course, a major shift occurred when Gutenberg invented the printing press, where books didn't have to be written by hand anymore, but they could be written or printed with a printing press and be multiplied, duplicated quickly and easily, and of course, at later stages affordably when the printing industry was creating more economies of scale. Then the next step was newspapers, where people were printing things on a daily basis and spreading them to the mass markets. The next step was radio and television, of course, where things people could engage with content even easier and faster. Didn't have to read the books anymore and wait for the newspaper, and engage with more senses, basically, right, interactively. But of course, when the internet was created, this was a picture of the AOL website back in the early 1990s. When people started to use the internet for commercial or for public purposes, people were able to connect with each other. And this is basically when the connection started to take form. And nowadays, as we know, we have on YouTube and tons of other types of tools where people can quickly interact, buy from each other, or basically get opinions, reviews, buy things quickly, get reviews. Amazon Prime, for example, where you can just watch any movie at any time you'd like. This all, got people to engage more with the content and got them to engage interactively. You can post your own videos on YouTube and get more information about you out to other people. So this means this engagement with things is way different than it was maybe 20, 30 or 100 years ago. Okay? So people like to engage, and the more you can get them to engage with your content, share information, talk about it, the better it is, of course, to attract customers. The third behavior is basically the customizing behavior. Customizing basically means that people seek to customize their experiences by choosing and modifying a wide assortment of information, products, and services. Right. So people want things to be customized to their needs. It's a very important concept. You can see it here. The example here is an in-store shopping process where you don't just go in the store, look at a few, coats or jackets and then leave. No, you get them to engage. You get them to look at mirrors where people can look how things look on them. If they choose a jacket, on screen, they can look at how this jacket would fit them, and they have somebody showing them on a tablet how things would look, maybe as far as the colors are concerned. You look at the fabric, how things are, manufactured, and basically shape your opinion and your buying experience, or also your decision process by basically looking at things and being able to engage with the content, and also by having this content customized to your own needs. Okay, so this is it's important to customize the product to the needs of the individual. This is the most important thing that you can do today. Not just manufacture something for the masses, but to customize it basically for the masses. So the buzzword here is called mass customization, which means you create a product, of course, to sell, to the public, to masses, but to be able to modify this product to each and every one. And this is basically the best way to manufacture your product. Okay. So the next step is basically the next behavior is the connect behavior, which means people are seeking to connect with one another by sharing experiences, ideas, opinions, and using text, images, which means pictures, and social links. I put up a statistic regarding the top 15 most popular social network sites. As you can see, Facebook, Instagram, Reddit, Pinterest YouTube are among the most popular sites. Regarding apps, you see WhatsApp as the most influential one. You have Messenger, you have WeChat, you have QQ Chat, and the like. To give you an idea how many tools are out there, and you can see people want to share, they want to connect, they want to stay connected all day long, around 24/7 basically. And you need to be aware of this when you create your product or your service, and set up a strategy, because this is how people behave nowadays, and there's no way around it basically. And if you can use it, all the better for you. And basically the last key behavior that people display nowadays is basically the collaborate behavior, which means taking into account that customers are social beings, that customers are, as social beings, attracted or drawn to be able to work together, right? So they want to set up, for example, certain collaboration projects, or they want to be able to connect in an enterprise remotely, right? So from having one person sit in one country, the other person sitting in the other country, and they look for tools to be able to work together, right? Of course, this is the most difficult one, because it requires skill about regarding collaborative platforms and software. But I listed here two very popular ones that you can use for collaboration. The first one is Slack on the left-hand side, where people can connect and you can share, PDFs and other documents. Set up channels and groups within this this network, and this can be used to exchange ideas and documents and of course text and everything, pictures, whatever. And the tool on the right hand side is called Trello, and Trello is also a tool where you can basically, it's used for project work, where you can put up certain tasks, and you can assign these tasks to certain people in your project group, and then you can track the progress and indicate which one was done or where you have problems, and everybody is basically aware of who's doing what and where the progress is basically. Okay, so these are just two tools you can use for your own for becoming more digital in your collaboration activities. Good. So now the question is, if we look at the 5 behaviors we just looked at, how can we use these behaviors that we know that people exhibit to come to a strategy, to a business strategy. And put up an overview, which is I think is very useful for you. Could be very useful for you to get to from the behavior that people display to a strategy, and then of course to implementing the strategy. So if we look at the axis on the top row, the axis behavior that people display, people want to access things quickly and easily, and the strategy would be here to be faster, to be easier, and to be everywhere, basically. So like Spotify, people can access their music anywhere they would like. And to be able to implement the strategy for your own business, you should be able to answer the questions: how could you make the experience faster, simpler, easier for your customers? How could you better integrate different interactions? And how could you make the service more accessible, more on demand, and more self-serve? Okay? And by answering these questions, you slowly but surely will get to your access strategy. Okay? The next strategy that is possible, or that you could choose, is the engage strategy. If you remember, customers seek to engage with the content interactively, and of course, the engage strategy, of course, would be for a business to become a source of valued content for your customers, right? Like Columbia Sportswear, what they did is instead of just selling backpacks and clothing for sportswear, they also put up certain tools for hikers, for example, what they can do in certain situations when they hike, or how they can use these tools that Columbia Sportswear put out there, and have a certain like a digital manual for people, how they can tie the knots, some useful things along their hiking experience. Right? So they get people to engage more, with the products they manufacture and what they do with this product. Right? So the questions to answer to implement this kind of strategy would be: how could you earn the attention of your audience? Right? So how can you get them more in tune with your product? The next question would be: what problem could you solve for your customers with the right content or information at the right time? This is what I just discussed with Columbia Sportswear. So that people buy your product and hope to solve a certain problem. And if you can help them in the process with more information, more help, more support, then of course you're one step ahead. Then the third question would be: would anyone not working at your company recommend this content to a friend? Of course, yeah, if you can get people to engage with your content and to get people to recommend you, of course, you can get people even more engaged. The next strategy would be the customized strategy for people, who want a wide assortment of information, products, and services. And of course, if you offer products that are adaptable to the needs of your customers, like Netflix does, then of course you're one step ahead of your competition. Why? Because what does Netflix do? Netflix monitors customers' behavior and what they do, and of course their preferences, their likes, and they compose a customized playlist, with new movies or new TV shows that are most likely interesting to the customer, to the individual customer, right? So this means they customize the experience by putting out the content or recommending content to the customer that is very likely to be very interesting to the customer. Also, newspapers, like digital newspapers, do it nowadays. They send you, let's say, push notifications about certain news that are most likely to be interesting to you. So this means that they're trying to customize the experience, or trying to get them to read something that you're most interested in. Okay. So the questions to ask here are: where do your customers' needs and interests differ from each other? Why would your customers want a more personalized experience? For better utility, for unique interests, or for self-expression? And how could you make it easy and not overwhelming for your customers to make the right choice for themselves? Okay. The next strategy would be the connect strategy, where businesses become part of the conversation, which means where you enter into the Facebook buzz, the YouTube video exchanges, that customers do, like Starbucks does. Starbucks uses digital tools to get customers to give them ratings, reviews, and also to help them innovate because they ask for opinions and improvements. And then, of course, Starbucks learns from their customers by getting these reviews. And of course, this is something that they use to better serve the customers, right? So connecting is a way to becoming more trusted, becoming a friend, becoming an advisor, basically. And by this, of course, companies shape their reputation even more. And the questions to answer here are: what conversations are your customers already having that are relevant to your objective? How could you enable, facilitate, or enhance those conversations rather than intruding on them? What could you learn from your customers' conversations? And what could you contribute to these conversations that your customers would value? Okay, so you help them. You become trusted advisor, if you will. The last strategy is basically the collaborate strategy, which is basically businesses inviting your customers to help build your enterprise. This is, of course, a nice one. I like that one. Why? Because you tell them, okay, people, we are here for you. So we need your participation to shape our brand because we want to be the way you need us. That's what CNN does, for example, where CNN allows people to send them their own recordings of, I don't know, if we talk about weather, for example, of hurricanes or snowfall in certain parts of town. You use this footage on CNN to supplement the news feed, right? And this is the way we know where the television programs or the broadcastings of CNN is formed by ordinary people. And of course, this is very, very intriguing to people because they see that they can make a difference, they contribute to a certain brand or product. And to get there, from a strategy perspective, you need to answer the questions: what skills could your customers bring to bear, and what are the limits in their ability to contribute successfully? What would most motivate customers? Excitement about your brand, cause, or project, social recognition, monetary rewards, or some combination of these? And how could you make sure customers feel validated and rewarded? Okay. So with these questions at hand, you can choose a strategy, right? What you think for your own business would be best at the moment. Then use these questions on the right hand side to implement the strategy and to come up with a way to make to get people to be to become aware. As I said before, awareness, consideration, preference, action, and loyalty and advocacy. This funnel basically, and you can use one of these strategies or even more than one to get people into this funnel and to basically become loyal and loyal fans and regular customers, and even people who talk about you, who advocate your products and services. Okay, so this was it for today. The first step basically in our digitalization process. I wish you all the best, and we'll see you in the next session where we will talk about building platforms for your customers where they can interact with one another. And then the third part where we will talk about communication processes on a global level and how you can make sure you set the right tone and you talk to people in an appropriate manner. So no matter where they are in the world, you will reach them and you will be able to relate to them and speak their language when it comes to being their trusted advisor regarding your products and services. Wish you all the best. Thank you for being with us, and I will see you on the next seminar. Thank you. Today we're going to talk about the topic of international settings, which is mastering cross-cultural communication. And the reason why this topic is so important is because nowadays, with the new digital technology arriving all over the world, and companies becoming interconnected also via social media, like Facebook, Twitter, and other social media accounts, people from all over the world do have the chance to visit your websites or your platforms that you set up. So, of course, we'll want to use, the advantage or take advantage of this circumstance, right? And be able to offer something to other people from outside of your own country, of course. So it's always advisable to set up your page, your web page, or your platform, as we discussed, not only in your native language, but also in English, or if you know, or if you have other people speaking other languages that you can, use to translate your website or your platform, set up other languages as well. The more you have, the better it is. But at least I would advise you to set up everything also in English, so other people can access your website from outside. Because if you have something to offer that is of value, then this might be or will be interesting to anyone around the world. And nowadays, almost anyone who is, a professional who works somewhere and has a certain degree of education, does speak English at least to a certain amount, and is able to understand what you are offering. So the question is, how do you master cross-cultural communication? And the answer is, it is very, very difficult. And the reason being, because culture is such a complex topic. There's countless literature about this topic, and regarding culture itself, countless definitions about what culture is or might be. That let's say, if you wanted to become an expert in this area, you would have to study for at least 10 years, I would say, to know what is on the market. So to give you an answer, it is difficult, it is not easy, and there is actually, in my opinion, no way of being able to fully understand a certain culture unless you have been raised in it, or you have lived for a certain amount of time within the culture. But of course, what you can do is you can try to access another culture by knowing certain things about the culture, knowing certain characteristics. And there's one model, or one, let's say, theory or access that a man named Hofstede has come up with, and he came up with cultural dimensions, which means he defined cultures in terms of his own cultural dimensions that he isolated in his work. And the reason why he did so is because he conducted one of the most comprehensive studies of how values in the workplace are influenced by cultures. He is an ex-IBM employee, and at the time he conducted his study, his large-scale study, he was working at IBM, and he surveyed, I don't know, a few hundred or even 1,000 people within IBM from different countries, because IBM does consist of employees of more than 50 countries or so. So he was able to submit his questionnaire, his survey to these people, and what he did was he first of all, he defined culture as the collective programming of the mind, distinguishing the members of one group or category of people from others. So according to his view, culture is basically sort of programming which takes place when children are born and raised in a certain environment. So they're programmed with certain values, and they accept these values as being, let's say, true. And then, of course, during their adulthood or teenage years, adulthood, they live with these values, and they see everything through the lens of these values. And Hofstede identified 6 dimensions of culture, and these 6 dimensions are the is the work that Hofstede bases his findings on. And let's look at the cultural dimensions that Hofstede developed. The first one is called power distance. And power distance basically describes how people in different societies accept hierarchical orders. And people in societies with a high degree of power distance accept a hierarchical order in which everybody has a place and which needs no further justification. Which means accept, let's say, people in power, they accept orders or decisions from top down. So they want their managers to make the decisions for them, basically, and carry out anything that is being ordered or let's say said on the top, on top of the management, from top management downwards. And in societies with low power distance, people strive more to equalize the distribution of power, and they demand justification for inequalities of power, which means, for example, in northern countries like Denmark or Sweden, these are countries that have a low power distance index, and in these countries, people expect to be treated equally, so there's not much distance between employees and management. So people basically work in flat hierarchies. They work more together, more as peers than bosses and subordinates, and they demand so. This means they view themselves as being of equal, value, or having equal rights as their bosses, which of course would never work in countries such as China or Japan, where people have a real high power index, and where they would never dare to view their bosses as equals. No, this would be unacceptable in these cultures. Then the next dimension is individualism, collectivism, and let's say if in a country or in a society where there is a high value for individualism, people or individuals are expected to take care of only themselves and their immediate families, which means people seek and strive to for self-actualization and self-fulfillment, and see themselves as individuals going through life and trying to achieve their own and doing things to achieve their own results, their own goals, and to their own best interests. And the opposite, collectivism, represents, let's say, a preference for tightly knit framework in societies in which individuals can expect their relatives or members of a particular in-group to look after them in exchange for unquestioning loyalty. Like, as an example, China, again, is a country that is highly collectivist. In this country, in China, people do not see themselves as individuals. They see themselves as a small part of a big whole, a big group or family. And the advantage, of course, is that they can expect others, out of their peer group to look after them, which means if something goes wrong, if they, have a problem, get sick or something, they can expect their company to, be sympathetic with them, to look after them, not to fire them immediately, as in the United States when somebody gets sick and is, cannot work for some time or is absent. they normally lose their job. That's the way it is in individualist countries. On the other hand, if this happens, of course, it's easier in these countries to get another job. But in other societies such as China and loyalty is the name of the game, and people apply for a certain company, and they normally do stay in this company whole lives. And this loyalty, of course, in return, what they get is they get support from their bosses, from management. If something happens to their families, they are being looked after, which is, of course, another advantage, being part of a collectivist culture. Then we have the third dimension, which is masculinity, femininity. Masculinity refers to typically masculine traits such as high achievement, breaking through barriers, achieving, having high standards, working hard, etc. Femininity is more like caring for the weak, looking for the quality of life, preference for cooperation. So these traits, let's call them, tough and soft, maybe. They were identified by Hofstede as being typically masculine and typically feminine. And there are societies, according to Hofstede, that are more masculine and some that are more feminine. And within these dimensions, these societies are grouped and are categorized in this dimension. The fourth dimension is uncertainty avoidance. In societies that are highly uncertainty avoidant, people do not like or are uncomfortable with uncertainty and ambiguity. What they do is they try to avoid this uncertainty by, reassuring themselves, or planning a lot, or trying to minimize uncertainty. In cultures where uncertainty avoidance does not play this big of a role, people do not try to avoid uncertainty a lot. They are comfortable with chaos, with living in uncertainty and ambiguity, and are not really keen on reducing this uncertainty by, for example, contracting a lot of insurances or something like this. So this is not part of the deal. One example would be Germany. Germany is a country with a high uncertainty avoidance index. So people in Germany usually try to avoid uncertainty. They don't like risks. They hate risks, basically. And on the contrary, United States, for example, the uncertainty avoidance index is relatively low, which means people in the United States like to take more risks. They don't plan as much as Germans do, and they're not uncomfortable with taking educated risks. So this is a difference that this dimension brings. Then we have long-term, short-term orientation. And long-term orientation, of course, refers to a society, where traditional values play a large role, and short-term orientation is a society where people just, look at, the next few days or maybe weeks or months, but not, over the next couple of years. So they do not plan for the future as much as long-term oriented societies do. An example for long-term oriented societies is, for example, China. Short-term would be, again, the United States. Then we have the sixth dimension, indulgence and restraint. Indulgence stands for a society that allows relatively free gratification of basic natural human drives related to enjoying life and having fun. Restraint stands for a society that suppresses gratification of needs and regulates it by means of strict social norms. I'll get examples that I downloaded from Hofstede's website. You can access this website just by entering it into Google. You just enter Hofstede, and then you will get to his site immediately. And then you can enter any country you like, and then you will get, as you can see here, with the example of Argentina, where I am at the moment. The dimensions for Argentina, the values for the 6 dimensions, what he found out in his work. And you can see here in this example, Argentina has a power distance index of 49 points, let's say, or percent, which is relatively high. It's not that high, but it is medium high, let's say, which means people view their superiors as their superiors. They keep them at a distance, let's say. Cooperative, participative, management is not as common as in other countries. So people like to take more, or are used to taking more orders and executing what management says. Individualism, 46%. So this country is or tends, it's not collectivist, I would say, but it tends to be more collectivistic than other societies. We'll see this in a moment, which means people see themselves as part of the society and as contributors to society, and they are comfortable with being, let's say, taken care of, and also expect the government or other people in their immediate surroundings or family, friends, to be there for them whenever there are problems or it becomes necessary for them to be taken care of. Then we have a masculinity index of 56%, which means this country is in the mid-range. We do have, of course, masculine values in this country, but not that high, which means people, of course, they do strive for success, but they also honor traits such as caring for others, modesty, and family and friends and traits like this. Then we have uncertainty avoidance, a really high value of 86%. I think this is the highest value I have ever seen, at least consciously. So as you can see, people from Argentina are typically very uncertainty avoidant, which means they don't like risks. They try to reduce risks as much as they can. They want things to stay the way they are, basically, and want things to be to remain basically the same without any major changes. Then we have a long-term orientation of 20, which is really low. This means that Argentinians are not long-term oriented. They look at their immediate, let's say, future days, weeks maybe, and try to make things work for the next couple of months or weeks or months, and do not plan for the future a lot. So people in Argentina would not be the ones, being the ones who save a lot of money for retirement. They probably would rather spend it on other things, and unlike other countries, they are not as long-term oriented. Then the indulgence dimension of 62 states, or let's say, tells us that Argentinians are people who enjoy life, who would like to be, do things for fun and indulge in nice things in life. On the other hand, now we have Germany as a contrary example, because this is where I live, and why I chose this country, for example. It's a nice contrast. As we can see, power distance index of 35 is rather low, which means that people expect to be treated equally within an organization. So a top-down management would not be rated as very nice or very good in Germany. Germans do want participation, and they feel left out if an organization or management does not do so. So if you have people from Germany, or if you have a German team, then it's advisable to treat them more as equals and not make decisions on your own as management, because this will be regarded as very, I would say, rude or impolite and not acceptable. Then we have individualism of 67%, a really high value, which means Germans are an individualist country, which means people tend to look after themselves only. And of course, their immediate families, children, wife, but not after other people so much. This is, if we jump back to Argentina, is more than higher than in Argentina, which means in Argentina you will see that people look also more after or care more for other people. This is not the case in Germany, where people do not really care so much about other people of society. They look more to themselves. Then masculinity means 66%. Germany tends to have traits such as striving for success, hard work, etc. Things such as having a nice work atmosphere, and etc. And modesty are not as important. People want to have success. They want to be rewarded by it, for it, and they want hard work. A very let's say, work precisely and look at the results, basically, similar to the United States. Then we have uncertainty avoidance. This is, of course, an index. If we look to Argentina again, we had 86%, which was really high. Germany is lower, but still on the high end, which means Germans also do not like uncertainty. They try to avoid uncertainty, but they do take more risks and more changes than their Argentinian counterparts, but they're still on the high end. Then long-term orientation of 83% is in stark contrast to Argentina. If we look at Argentina, it's 20%. So Germans are very long-term oriented, which means they like to plan. They like to plan for the future. They like to plan for retirement. They save a lot, and they tend to do things more regarding the future, as opposed to tomorrow or next week. Then we have indulgence of 40%, as opposed to Argentina with 62%. Germany, which means Germany does, of course, also enjoy life, but not as much as Argentina, which means Germany does adhere more to social rules. They do not, let's say, if we say it colloquially, let themselves go so much. They, look to social norms and behave within these norms. People who do not do so are regarded, let's say, suspiciously, and there's not so much room for being indulgent and do things for having fun and just letting oneself go. So this is not a behavior that is so much accepted in Germany. So as you can see, when you look at these two countries, they are not so different, but they are different in certain aspects. And with these dimensions, you can quickly see certain trends and certain typical behaviors. I put another. It's called Global GBS. By Hofstede, it's an intercultural disc. It's called. It's which is basically just it's a disc where you have certain styles here. I put this for you just so you can see how certain countries or cultures are oriented. We have the active task-oriented cultures that are assertive and results-oriented, with quick decisions, challenges, being more aggressive, impatient, desires to lead. You can see the Netherlands, Denmark, and the United States are very active, task-oriented. Then we have active, people-oriented societies consisting of outgoing and persuasive, people-oriented, optimistic, strong communication skills-oriented people, like Latin America, Saudi Arabia, Russia. And we have passive, people-oriented, very patient and favor stability, structure. No risk takers, like to operate at a steady, even pace, such as Vietnam, Hong Kong, China, and Japan, which means they want things to be structured, no risks, everything in place. Then we have the passive, task-oriented countries such as Switzerland, Luxembourg, and the UK, where data, facts, and analytics prevail. Precise and accurate things are favored. They trust in value and structure. Countries, as I said, such as UK, Switzerland, and also Germany, Belgium, that are somewhere between passive and active, task-oriented, are in this scope. So you can with this you can quickly see how people behave, if they're more active or passive, if they're more people or task-oriented. Which is also a nice indicator of how cultures work. Well, this would be it for Hofstede's cultural dimensions. Maybe just one word regarding these dimensions. It is very important that you keep in mind that these dimensions were assessed about 30 years ago in the early 1980s, which means quite some time ago. And you need to keep in mind that culture does change, and with the global economy and being interconnected via digital networks, things do change. We have a lot of influence from other countries in our cultures. We have a lot of immigration going on, especially in Europe right now. So we will see changes in cultures, in approaches. People, becoming more open to other dimensions. As compared to before. So keep this in mind when assessing a culture, because this is something which is very important. And of course, people have their own personalities, so not everybody is equal. And there are some societies or some sub-societies, regions in certain countries that are different from other regions. So you always should, despite these dimensions that give you a broad direction, you should be open and observant to changes and to your immediate counterparts, people you deal with. And with this, I think you can you have at least a broad understanding of how culture might function. And when setting up websites or platforms, or when entering into communication with your customers or business partners, you can quickly jump to Hofstede's webpage and check out a certain country, and then you can see how these people do behave. Typically, as I said, with variations, of course. Then you will be able to have at least an understanding of how this culture will work. So this would be it for today. I thank you a lot for being part of this e-learning. I wish you all the best for the future. And if there are any questions, please contact me either via the YouTube channel or via my website, which is, of course, www.alexsilonka.com. Thank you very much. Have a great day and take care. Bye-bye.